4 klukkstundir og 50 mínútur. Vona á ljómandi góðum skilur mæli með tónmæli tíma.
Tamara and I went to Iceland in the dead of winter when the sun barely rose above the horizon and there were only a few hours of daylight. We actually only knew each other for a few months when we took the trip, so it's like our first date was to the isolated subarctic island.
We are in Iceland.
We got into Reykjavik around 10 a.m. in late January, but the sun still showed no signs of rising and the nights were at their longest. We stopped for a bite to eat at the popular Laundromat Cafe before setting off to explore Iceland's capital city. At 244 feet, the iconic Hallgrímskirkju in central Reykjavik is the tallest building in Iceland. It took over 40 years to build and was finished in 1986, so it's a relatively new addition to Reykjavik, which was founded in the 9th century. The view from the top of the spire is one of the best you can find of the city. Reykjavik is quite possibly the cutest and coziest city in the world.
Which way? All right, let's go. The snow has changed again. It's gone from little tiny pellets into actual proper snowflakes. And it does seem to change every 5 minutes.
Reykjavik has its own Scandinavian style, and like a lot of places where it's dark for large parts of the year, they put a lot of color on their buildings. Another iconic building with its own style is the Harpa, a downtown concert hall on the water. They started building it back in 2007, but the global financial crash in 2008 hit Iceland particularly hard. The government chipped in to finish the incomplete building, but for a few years, the Harpa was the only construction project on the go in the entire country. Reykjavik's harbor has some great views of the city, as well as some great restaurants, especially if you like seafood. The prices are generally high, but really, where else are you going to go? It's an island. Right in the middle of town is a cute pond called Tjörnin. And in the pond is an island, so Tamara and I took a short break to hang out on an island in a pond on an island in the Arctic Sea. The view is special and only possible while the water is frozen. City Hall and some of Reykjavik's best museums surround the Tjörnin, and it's often known as the largest bread soup in the world because of the ridiculous amount of bread people feed to the local duck and swan populations. A short drive outside of Reykjavik is the popular tourism region known as the Golden Circle, which has 3 primary stops: Thingvellir National Park, the Gullfoss Waterfalls, and the geysers Geyser and Stroker. Though Geyser has been mostly dormant for years, Stroker continues to erupt every 5 to 10 minutes. After checking out the sights, we made our way on the 6-hour drive on the Ring Road through the beautiful Icelandic countryside on our way to the second largest city, Akureyri. Located just a few kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, Akureyri has about 20,000 people and a cozy, vibrant culture including skiing, fishing, and geothermically warmed public pools. Just outside of the city, you can find and smell the geothermal mud pots. One of the things about Iceland in general is that you can usually smell the eggy sulfuric odor that comes with volcanic geothermal hotspots. After a while, you almost start to not notice the stink, but not completely. After we got our share of the mud pots, we started the long journey on the ring road to the other side of the island, which should have taken about 7 to 8 hours under ideal circumstances. But we were thwarted by the recent weather in eastern Iceland, which shut down the highway. With only a short amount of sunlight to work with and no idea what detour we should take, we had a short roadside freakout while we considered our options, including driving 15 hours around the island from where we had come from. But in the end, we discovered a longer route that took us through the eastern fjords, and while it added an extra 6 hours to our drive, we did end up being in the right place to see our first display of the Northern Lights.
Oh, this is a bigger town than I was expecting, actually. You say 300 people. I expect, like,
But apparently it's like the key point for anyone who's traveling the South Coast to stop and like
all
this is where
roads
you
lead to
find
Vic.
The town of Vik at the southernmost tip of Iceland gets its name from the Old Norse word for cove or inlet, and it is best known for its badass black sand beaches. If that wasn't metal enough, the name Vik is the prefix for the word Viking. Just a short drive away from the pitch-black shores is an incredible farmhouse bed and breakfast run by a family that has lived on the land for 100 years. The Grand Guest House Gardakat. The Grand Guesthouse Gardakat is a fully functioning farm with dozens of sheep and chickens, run by a wonderfully friendly family that is happy to share their way of life while still respecting your privacy. The sunrises were completely mind-blowing.
We're documenting our route.
Our accommodations were the best we had the entire trip around the island.
And then, in addition, we have
this guy.
The guest house has a full kitchen at our disposal, and we were treated to homemade baking when we arrived,
cake and coffee right now by candlelight.
as well as a farmer's breakfast each morning. Gardakat was built in the 1930s, and it still has that old-timey simplicity and coziness you would hope to experience. It has 4 bedrooms, 2 on each floor, so there were other travelers staying with us from Spain, France, and China. Everybody was super chill. At night, the temperatures plummeted and the subarctic skies came alive with the aurora borealis. Some nights you could barely make them out, but on other nights we were blessed with a spectacular display that you would swear you could hear the crackling in the skies above you. A short drive from Gardakat is one of Iceland's most famous waterfalls. Vik lies right at the base of a massive glacier that is sitting on top of a volcano, so there's water constantly flowing, as well as the potential for disaster if the volcano ever erupts and flash melts billions of liters of water.
We're here at Skullfoss. Woohoo! Pretty slippery. And I'm wearing the worst shoes in the world. I'm an idiot.
One of Vik's most famous attractions is a short drive from Gardakat, but it is a bit of a challenge to get to it. On November 4th, 1973, an American Navy DC-3 made an emergency crash landing on the Black Beaches. The wreck might be most widely known outside of Iceland as Justin Bieber's skateboard ramp from his video for I'll Show You.
We are on our way to an airplane crash site. We're so in the middle of nowhere. A little bit more. Somewhere without. There's still no sign of this airplane. We show him his boss, babe. Nope, no sign of the plane yet. Still walking miles through this frozen, icy desert. Alright, so we've been walking for... How long have we been walking for? Half an hour? You've not been walking for. There's no concept of time or distance. Because we're in the middle of nowhere. But at the very last second, boom, the plane appears.
The plane has been stripped down considerably and has suffered vandalism from inconsiderate visitors and strain from the extreme climate. The 4-kilometer walk from the highway is taxing in the snow. The sun is blinding and the wind is fierce, so Tamara was understandably annoyed when we were offered a ride back in a tour bus and I unilaterally decided to turn it down without consulting with her. The walk back to the highway seemed much longer and colder than the walk there, but for some reason, she still loves me.
I'll be back.
Oh, she's back.
That was fast. I'm fast like that.
Super.
Super fly.
Alright, that's enough witty banter.
As we headed back to Reykjavik to finish up our trip around Iceland, we needed to tank up, but discovered the hard way that simply using a credit card to fill up the tank wasn't as easy as one would assume. Many of the gas stations are unstaffed and require a gas card in order to fill up.
It ain't working for me. We have to go into town and find a place that sells gas cards.
Fortunately, we had just enough gas to make it to a service station where we were able to fill her up.
There's a place to eat here. So we'll stop in here.
Oh,
Get
there's
the
gas.
gas.
There's N1.
Yes.
N1. Can we go inside and get the gas card?
I'm gonna go inside here.
Yeah. I'll park here. To N1, if you're listening, and you totally aren't. Talk.
Fuck you.
The last stop we made was at the world-famous Blue Lagoon, a geothermal spa and resort between the airport and Reykjavik, known for its blue waters and rejuvenating mud. Most visitors to Iceland choose to visit the lagoon as soon as they get off the plane, but you just end up arriving with a plane full of tourists, and the lagoon is already pretty busy to begin with.
At the Blue Lagoon, we have to go outside.
By going at the end of our trip, we didn't have to wait in line to enter, and there's no better way to say goodbye to Iceland than a relaxing soak before you fly. Tak, Iceland. We fell in love with your cold, dramatic landscapes and your warm, welcoming people. And we will be back.